Hello students, welcome to this session on data analysis and interpretation. Data analysis and interpretation is the process of assigning meaning to the collected information and determining the conclusions, the significance of the study and implications of the findings. Data is entered into a computer system and then it has to be checked, has to be read and reread to be completely familiar with the data. For data processing to be successful, it is good to have an overall picture of the data. Learning objectives. By the end of the lecture, students will be able to get a basic understanding of the data analysis, familiarize with data editing, and discuss the phases of the quantitative data analysis, interpret and conclude the findings of the data analysis. Interpreting data is an important critical thinking skill. It is a process of critiquing the findings of the study. It includes data explanation, comparing and contrasting the data and making future predictions. And the usefulness of the research lies in the proper interpretation. There are three phases of quantitative data analysis. Pre-analysis phase, that means before the analysis starts, analysis phase, during the analysis phase, and interpretative phase. So after you do the analysis, you have to interpret the findings of the study. Pre-analysis phase. The collected raw data, it is in the form of words or the digits, and it may contain some errors, some omissions, some of the question papers may not be complete. So processing of the collected data has to be done before the data analysis. Data analysis process differs from one study to another. Clerical tasks, administrative tasks, reviewing all the data forms for whether they are complete and whether they are legible, whatever answers they have given. Identifying the missing information in the questionnaires, assigning identification numbers, and selecting software packages. And this phase has 8 steps. Pre-analysis phase has 8 steps. Coding the data and then entering the data into the computer files. So this has to be done. Editing of data, inspecting the collected raw data and then to detect any errors and omissions and then correct them. Careful scrutiny, a thorough scrutiny of the completed questionnaires. So editing of data, coding of data, data entry, data verification, data cleaning, creating analysis files, organizing the data, and finally presenting the data. So these are the steps. So coming to the one, that is editing of data, inspecting the editing is process of examining the collected raw data or the questionnaires and detecting the errors in the questionnaires or in the questionnaire schedules. Careful scrutiny of the completed questionnaires to be done. Editing ensures that data is accurate, consistent, and it is uniformly entered and well arranged. It can be done at 2 stages, field editing and the post-field editing. Field editing is done during data collection for whether they are complete and they can to be done immediately after the interview and preferably on the same day. The post-field editing, also known as central editing, it is carried out when all the questionnaires have been completed and they have been collected back. So it is consistent with the other facts. So data should be as complete as possible so that it facilitates the coding and the tabulation. The field editing will also include some abbreviated form of the interviews to be edited and reviewing all the questionnaires thoroughly, whether there are any entries in the wrong place. Data editing techniques. So there are some techniques which can be followed for editing the data. Range check 1, count check 2, and validation check 3. So what is range check? Range is checked for each quantitative data and it reveals the entries with a very high values or low values and they are known as outliers. So outliers can be due to the errors in measurement or errors in selection or errors in typing. Count check. So count the total entries for each variable. It should be equal to the all variables. If it is less, then there is a missing data. And blanks can also be checked. And software is used to do the entry to avoid all these errors. Validation check. So using software programs assists in data editing. So if you're using software programs, it will not accept illegal entries. Screening of data. So it is a part of editing the data, screening of the data, completion of the tools. 1, checking for illegal entries. 2, checking for failure to record. 3, and the 4th, check for inconsistencies in the data. Completion of the tools. So tools are completely filled, no unanswered items. So adopt the technique of check, recheck, and then check again. So this is completing the tools if they are incomplete. Checking for illegal entries. So illegal entries, there's no scope for illegal entries, or also known as wrong entries of data. For example, inclusion of a subject who is outside the study population. So that's an illegal entry. Checking for failure to record. So verify for complete and comprehensive recording of the data. Illegible handwriting to be avoided. So there should be adequate time given for collection of data and also for recording of the data to avoid failure to record. Checking for inconsistencies in the data. Data must be in congruence with the type of questions in the tool. For example, the example for inconsistencies, puerperal sepsis as a cause of death in males. Though it is related to the females, it is post-delivery puerperal sepsis. So this is how this data can be screened. Part of editing the data. Coding of the data. Coding, as it simplifies the transferring the data from questions. They must have the following characteristics. For example, they are assigned the numbers or alphabetical symbols to the subject's responses, either A, B, C or 1, 2, 3, depending on the number of the subjects, to put them into a limited number of categories or classes. And data is transferred to a master sheet for easy and quick calculations. So they must have the following characteristics. 1, there must be a exhaustiveness. Exhaustiveness means there must be a class for every data item. For example, if there is a question related to the educational qualifications and the options are assigned numerical codes, could be 1, 2, and 3 respectively, and answer can only be one of these options. So classes should refer to only the educational qualifications and not any other parameters, for example, experiences, etc. So exhaustiveness, mutually exclusive. Specific answer can be allocated to only one of the cells in a given category. Answer to only one of the options. For example, if it is related to qualification, JNM, BSc Nursing, MSc Nursing, it has to be only one of the categories. Unidimensional. So every class is defined in terms of a single variable. This is the coding of the data. Data entry. So once the coding has been done, it is ready to transfer to a data file. So though data entry, turns out to be a monotonous process and also tiresome process, but it is also prone to maximum errors, and it can be simplified with the help of use of computers. The errors in data entry can occur, for example, either due to coding problems, some issues with the coding, or wrong entries, or misreporting of the information. So illegal entries, any entry which is beyond the scope of the study. Unusual entry, to be confirmed and then to be checked. Missing entry, so rows and columns both to be checked carefully to find out the missing entries. And data entry is followed by data verification. So one was editing of data, 1. 2, coding of the data. 3, data entry. Now coming to number 4, that is data verification. So data verification is visual comparison. You verify it visually, visual comparison of the printed numbers from the data file with the original source codes. So data becomes ready for analysis only after the data verification process. Errors can occur during the verification process, missing values, outliers, and wild codes. So missing values could be, for example, if there are values from any of the important variables that have been skipped questions, the subject has to be excluded from the analysis if there are missing values. Outliers means they are unusually large scores or small scores. They are separate from the rest of the data. They are significantly separated from the rest of the data, and they are either out of range or it is physically impossible. Their values, they are a result of improper entry or it is a processing errors. So for example, if the entry is monthly income of India rupees 30,000 and while all other entries are below 3,000, that's just an error. Wild code. Wild code. Wild code refers to the code that is not permissible. For example, if the variable gender has been defined codes male for 1, female for 2, and if you find in the questionnaires code number 5 is discovered, so that indicates an error. So this is how the data verification is done. Data cleaning. So after you verify the data, it has to be cleaned. So all the data must be entered legibly. Data cleaning involves checking for the missing values, one, checking outliers, and then wild codes, etc. Labeling missing values. So it has to be carefully documented in the report with the suitable labeling of each missing value with a suitable explanation to assure an accurate basis for the analysis. So this has to be reported, missing values. Removal of outliers. So values that are invalid or impossible or they are extreme values may be eliminated from the data set. They should be noted for exclusion from the analysis. Removal of wild codes. So computer programs may be used for entering the data and consistency checks can also be performed. So the computer programs also perform automatic range checks. So this was the data cleaning. So this was after data verification, data cleaning is done. Then coming to next point, that is creating and documenting the analysis files. So data cleaning process is followed by developing an analysis file, which is and the help of statistical software package is taken to develop an analysis files. A code book is used. Each variable is listed with essential information and codes are linked with the values of the variables and some other basic information. So creating and documenting the analysis files after the data cleaning process. Next, organization of data. The collected data from various sources is organized and data can be classified and a master sheet is developed. And this arranged information is also known as an array of the data. It is organized into homogeneous groups to get the meaningful relationships. Master chart is developed. For example, for demographic details, patients' ID numbers are recorded in rows and age, gender, educational status, occupation is done in the columns. And this whole thing is known as array of the data. So this was organization of data and creating and documenting the analysis files. How the data can be classified. For example, now when you have collected the collected raw data has to be grouped to enable easy retrieval of the essential data. And the process of categorizing the data into groups or types or classes is known as classification of the data. And it is done according to the similarities between the attributes or characteristics. And it is known as classification of data. And data is grouped based on the common characteristics so that comparison between the samples becomes easier. Classification according to the attributes. It could be according to descriptive characteristics. It could be according to numerical characteristics. According to descriptive, it could be gender, type of the family, whether it is single or it is joint, marital status, married or unmarried, religion, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, etc. It cannot be measured. It can only be observed. So it can't be measured numerically. Numerical characteristics, quantitative phenomena can be measured objectively. Data relating to income, height, and temperature, etc. Numerical data can be classified into discrete and continuous categories. Further be classified into discrete and continuous. Discrete means it is possible to count the items. They can be counted and then they can be listed and counted. For example, marks in a particular subject can be counted from 0 to 100. Continuous data cannot be counted because measurements cannot be counted, describing using equal class intervals can only be described. For example, monthly income from 1 rupees to 5,000, and then one class, and then 5,001 to 10,000. So every class has a lower range or the lower limit and the upper limit. And the difference between this forms the frequency of each class. And the difference between them is known as the range of the class. And the class intervals, they're all equal intervals. So this was about the data classification, discrete and continuous, and according to the characteristics, numerical and descriptive. Presentation of data. So once the data has been classified, it has to be summarized, it has to be organized, and then communicated in the form of tables and figures or diagrams. The presentation of data could be in the tabular form or graphical form. In tabular presentation, the raw data is summarized and it is displayed in columns and rows for further analysis. And the main purpose is to prevent the data it is presented in an informative and meaningful manner. So it should facilitate interpretation. It should be self-explanatory tables, and they can be either simple tables which presents a single characteristics, and complex which may have many characteristics, and they are all interrelated. So this was tabular presentation of the data. Graphic presentation, data is presented in the form of graphs with the help of software packages. Data can be graphically presented in many different types. For example, it is more effective than the tabular form. Bar charts, pie charts, histogram can all be made. Frequency, polygon, etc. can be made. So this was tabular presentation and graphical presentation of data. Analysis phase. Now coming to the phase 2, up to this it was pre-analysis phase. Coming to the phase 2, analysis phase, or also known as statistical phase. So what is analysis? It is the process of organizing and synthesizing the data to answer the research questions and also test the hypothesis. Analysis is a process of systematically applying statistical techniques to describe the data, summarize the data, and compare the data. Quantitative analysis is a highly systematic process which uses numerical data to describe, to compare, and then to interpret the results. So analysis phase or statistical phase. Now to draw the accurate conclusions, it is significant that the collected data is reliable, data entered is accurate, and analytical process selected is appropriate. Missing data or incomplete data issues to be solved before the data analysis takes place. The raw data which is collected has to be made meaningful, and the results are drawn through the process of analysis. The purpose of analyzing data is to test the hypothesis, test statistical significance of the data, draw inferences, and then make generalizations of the findings of the study. Now, based on the goals of the analysis. Now, this is quantitative analysis is based on there are many types of quantitative analysis. It can be categorized in many different ways. For example, 1, based on the goals and aims of the study. 2, based on the assumptions about the data. 3, based on the number of variables. So number 1, based on the goals of analysis, it can be two types of analysis: descriptive analysis and inferential analysis. So coming to the descriptive analysis, the characteristics, the behaviors, and the experiences of the study participants can be examined. The main purpose is to provide as much details as possible about the characteristics. So they are described, and then they are organized, summarized, and then finally they are presented in the forms of graphs and tables. Descriptive statistics. So descriptive statistics can be categorized. For example, measures to organize the data: 1, measures of central tendency; 2, 3, measures of variability; 3, 4, measures of relationship. I will see one by one. To start with, measures to organize the data. There is huge volume of data that has to be condensed into a more understandable form. Data can be organized by frequency distribution and also by graphic presentations, percentages. So this is organizing the data. Number 2, measures of central tendency. So these statistics describe the coverage or the most common average or the most common values for a group of data, and they represent the way the data tends towards the center. So they describe the average or the most common values. Center refers to the middle value or the average value, and the tendency is the inclination of the values to cluster, get together in a certain way. It summarizes a frequency distribution using a single number, and it is most appropriate for interval data and or ratio data. The common measures which have been used are the arithmetic mean, the median, and the mode. And this is most appropriate for summarizing data. The most common measures are arithmetic mean, the median, and the mode. So this was number 2, measures of central tendency. Now coming to number 3, measures of variability. So two important features of a data set include the center of the data and then how the data is spread, the spread of the data. The center can be measured by using mean, median, and the mode. And the spread of the data can be measured by using range, variance, standard deviation, and coefficient of variation. So these were the measures of variability. Coming to number 4, measures of relationship. There are various methods to examine such relationships. The measures the relationship between two or more variables or two or more sets of data. The degree to which the value of variable x is related to the value of variable of y. For example, they can be correlation coefficients, they can be scatter plots, and they can also be contingency tables. So these were the descriptive statistics, measures to organize the data, central tendency, variability, and relationship. Now coming to the inferential statistics. Inferential statistics are statistical methods which are used to test the hypothesis by using the data. And they also allow the researcher to make predictions. So hypothesis testing and making predictions. So making predictions about the population, whether the hypotheses are supported or not. So inferential statistics. Inferential statistics are used to infer. The inferential means to infer the results of the sample. And these statistics measure the difference between two variables or subgroups of a variable. They also allow the researcher to make predictions about a particular population, which is based on the sample information. And hypotheses can also be tested. Inferential statistics help in finding the relationships, finding the differences, and also associations between two or more variables with the help of parametric tests and non-parametric tests. And they also provide a platform for further clinical practice and research. So parametric tests, so there are parametric tests, they make assumptions, or there are specific conditions about the population. So they make assumptions about the population parameters. And the tests can be t-test, z-test, and analysis of variance test. So parametric tests. So based on the assumptions of data. Quantitative analysis, they are grouped into two large categories based on the assumptions about the data. You see the previous ones. Yes. So we have seen based on goals and aims of the study. Now coming to number two, that is based on the assumptions about data. And then we will see the third one based on the number of variables. Now the second one based on assumptions of the data. Quantitative analysis are grouped into two large categories based on the assumptions about the data. So these are parametric tests and non-parametric tests. Parametric tests, they make assumptions about the population parameters and the distribution from which the data is drawn. And if information on population parameters is completely known, if we know what the population parameters are, then parametric tests can be carried out. Parametric tests, so based on the assumptions, the data should follow a normal distribution, falls into a normal or bell-shaped distribution. These are based on the assumptions. This can be assumed only that when interval or ratio level measures are collected, when samples are large enough in size to achieve the normality. It is more powerful than non-parametric tests, and they are because they are able to lead a rejection of the hypothesis. For example, t-test, f-test, z-test, and one-way analysis of variance or ANOVA. So they are based on the assumptions that data should follow the normal distribution. So parametric tests. Non-parametric tests. Non-parametric tests, there are no assumptions made about the population. That means when there's no knowledge about the population parameters, and hypothesis has to be tested. So the statistics tests used will be non-parametric tests. For example, chi-square test, Mann-Whitney test, Kruskal-Wallis test. So non-parametric tests, when there is no information about the population parameters, and for hypothesis testing, non-parametric statistics are needed. They can be applied when parametric conditions are not met. That means when there is no normal distribution, equal variance, and independence. For example, Spearman rank coefficient, and also chi-square test and Mann-Whitney test. They are used in the field of health sciences, nursing. They are valid in a broad range of situations. For example, if you want to assess the pain, grading the bed sores in patients, grade 1, 2, or 3, effectiveness of the drug actions. So when the sample may be too small. So it does not assume that data follows a specific distribution. So they are also known as distribution-free tests. These were non-parametric tests. Advantages. They're very simple and easy to understand. They do not require the knowledge about the population parameters. They do not rely on normal distribution. Non-parametric tests assess the median rather than the mean. So they are suitable for these studies. And they are valid when the sample size is small. Easily applicable for the attribute data. And they can be performed with nominal data, ordinal data, and outliers. So this was the non-parametric tests. Now coming to the third category, that is based on the number of variables. So quantitative analysis can also be classified in terms of number of variables and also the type of variables. Number one, univariate analysis, which uses only one variable. Bivariate analysis uses two variables, and multivariate analysis uses more than two variables. So this is based on the number of variables: univariate, bivariate, and multivariate. Based on the number of variables, univariate, it deals with the examination of only one variable at a time, when single dependent variable or only one group is included. For example, only the height of school children and not the weight. So the purpose is to only describe the variables. Univariate. Bivariate deals with examination of two variables simultaneously. The most common is correlation. So the relation between gender and height of the school children to determine the relationship between the two variables, and also when you are checking both height and the weight of school children, so correlating height and weight of school children. So this was univariate and bivariate analysis. Multivariate analysis, it deals with the examination of more than two variables simultaneously, relationship between, for example, gender, race, and height of school children, all the three. So it is more than two, multivariate. And the purpose is to determine the relationship between multiple variables, that how is the gender related to the height, or the race is related to the height or the of the school children. Interpretive phase. So phase 1 was pre-analysis, 2 was analysis phase. Now phase 3 is interpretive phase. So interpretive phase is critical examination of the analyzed results to draw the conclusions and draw the inferences. So it is a search for meaning in relation to the research problem, in relation to the objective stated, in relation to the conceptual framework or theoretical framework, and the hypothesis. It is an activity of critical thinking, so carefully done through the brainstorming method to infer the condensed and statistically computed data. So it answers the research questions and also tests the hypothesis. So collection and analysis of data is followed by interpretation of the results, and it provides a real meaning to the numerical data which is collected, analyzed, and presented. Interpretive phase. So interpretation is one of the most essential tasks in a research process to frame the recommendations of a research study. So interpretation of findings is found towards the end of a research report under the discussion heading. A very subjective activity and also most liable to bias and errors. So there are many components of interpretive phase. Need to be very careful and critical while examining the study results to draw the accurate interpretations. Interpretations of the results forecast the study usefulness based on the objectives of the study. So one has to be very careful during interpretive phase. Interpretive phase. So these are the components of the interpretive phase. 1, discussion of the findings of the study. 2, examining the meaning of those findings or those results. 3, considering the significance of those findings from this study. 4, generalization of the findings. 5, drawing the conclusions from the study findings. 6, suggesting implications. 7, making recommendations. So these are the components of the interpretive phase. Some do's for the effective intervention. Interpretations. Interpretations must be made in light of the research problem, objective stated, conceptual framework, hypothesis, and assumptions about the study. It has to be a careful consideration and recognition of limitations to avoid inappropriate meaning to the findings of the study. So it is a critical examination of each element of the study results before framing the interpretations. So misinterpretations to be avoided, over interpretations to be avoided. Each part, each segment must receive close intention to avoid misrepresentation of the facts. So this was do's for effective interpretation. Discussion of findings. 1, the discussion should connect to the research question, should connect to the hypothesis stated, and also the previous review of literature related to the subject or the topic. The study results are discussed whether they are in agreement with or not with the previous research. The study results are explained in light of the existing body of the knowledge and also the new understanding of the research problem, which has been generated from this present study. The following should be kept in mind. Restate the research problem in discussion of finding. The research problem has to be restated, and also the methodology used, and also the major findings of the study has to be stated under the discussion of findings. Detail the meaning and importance of each findings. The underlying meaning and significance of each findings has to be systematically explained. So first explain the unanticipated findings or the most significant findings, and then systematic review of each finding has to be done. Relating the findings to similar studies. So discussion should involve comparing and contrasting the present study findings with the previous studies done. Comparison supports and highlights the present study results, and contrast explains how the study differs from the similar studies. So this was the discussion of the findings. Consider alternative explanation of the findings. All explanations should be considered pertaining to the study results, not only related to the hypothesis or the assumptions. Acknowledging the study's limitations. So identify the limitations and acknowledge the limitations, problems encountered during the study, whether it is data collection or it is any other problem, and also their reasons. Why have you faced the problems? Make suggestions for the further research. So it should conclude with making suggestions for the further research. Number two, examining. After discussion of the findings, number two is examining the meaning of the results, that is interpretations. So it involves explaining the meaning of the data, which is based on the objectives of the study. To interpret the results, the data analysis must be carefully examined and organized. The interpretation differs in quantitative studies and qualitative studies. In quantitative studies, statistical results are included, and these results include calculated values, degrees of freedom, and significance levels, etc. So they support statement of the results. So interpreting the results of the descriptive statistics, interpreting the results of the inferential statistics, interpretation of the p-value and the effect size, interpretation of the independent samples t-test, interpretation of the paired samples t-test, interpretations of one-way ANOVA, interpretations of Pearson product moment correlation, interpretation of the chi-square test, interpretation of the hypothesis testing. So all this has to be interpreted. Interpreting the results of descriptive statistics. So basic features of the data are described. Measures of central tendency, variability are used. The output includes n means size of the sample, mean, median, they represent the center of the data, standard deviation, and graphs. So the mean, median, both they measure central tendency and they indicate whether the data is symmetric or not. A higher value indicates greater speed in the data. So standard deviation determines how spread out the data is from the mean. In a normal distribution, the graph is a bell-shaped curve. So graphs explain shape of the data distribution and spread of the data distribution. And they also identify the outliers. And in a normal distribution, the graph is a bell-shaped curve. That means mean, mode, and median have the same value. The more the points are spread out from the center of the data, the greater the variation in the sample. Histogram. Histogram is used to detect the skewness. Skewness is asymmetry in the statistical distribution, and the curve appears distorted either to the left or to the right. Plot diagrams. Plot diagrams determine the spread of the points and the variation in the sample. Outliers can also be identified by using plot diagrams. Number two, interpreting the results of the inferential statistics. So inferential statistics make inferences. They help in concluding whether difference between the two groups, experimental and the control group, is a real one or it is just by a chance. Hypothesis testing is used to find out the inferences. Null hypothesis indicates that there are no differences in the groups or relationships among the variables. And the alternative hypothesis indicates a difference in the groups or relationships in the variables. Interpretation of the p-value and the effect size. A p-value or significant level indicates the probability that a result is obtained by chance. And in nursing research, the most common significance levels are 0.05 or 0.01. So this indicates a 5% or 1% chance of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. A smaller p-value of 0.01 as compared to the p-value of 0.05 will decrease the chances of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is true. So this was p-value and the effect size interpretation. When p-value is less than or equal to the significance level, which is designated by the researcher, should have rejected the null hypothesis and reported a difference in the groups or variables among the variables. A significant p-value indicates statistical significance, and effect size will denote the relative magnitude of the differences or relationship. Effect size is more useful for clinical practice because it indicates clinical significance and also importance. So this was p-value and the effect size. Now next, coming to the independent samples t-test. So independent samples t-test is used when we are comparing two independent groups on a continuous dependent variable, and there should be different participants in each group. Paired samples t-test. So paired, it compares two sets of data from one group of people on a continuous dependent variable, is used in pre-intervention and post-intervention studies. One-way analysis of variance, ANOVA. ANOVA compares two or more independent groups on a continuous dependent variable, and it also investigates the differences between the groups. Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. It measures the relationship between two continuous variables, and it is reported as the statistic R, and the values range from -1 to 1. Negative R values indicate an inverse relationship or a negative relationship. As the value of variable x increases, the corresponding value of y decreases. So it is a negative relationship or inverse relationship. Positive R value indicates a direct relationship or a positive relationship. As the value of variable x increases, the corresponding value of y also increases. This is negative and positive. Now, strength of the relationship can be described with reference to the R value. If it is weak, it will be plus 0.002, less than 0.3, moderate 0.3 to 0.5, 0.30 to 0.50, strong, it will be more than 0.5. Chi-square test. So interpreting chi-square test, we have just seen interpretation of the ANOVA, interpretation of the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient, interpretation of the independent samples t-test, interpretation of paired samples t-test. Now coming to the interpretation of chi-square test. A chi-square test is used to examine the relationship between categorical level variables, and the chi-square test compares the observed frequencies and the expected frequencies of the data. Interpretation of the hypothesis testing. The results of the hypothesis testing fall into one of the three categories. 1. The null hypothesis is not rejected. 2. The null hypothesis is rejected and research hypothesis is supported. 3. The null hypothesis is rejected and results are in the opposite direction from the prediction of the research hypothesis. So this was hypothesis testing. When hypothesis is supported, describing the results becomes easy because a relevant explanation is given with the previous research or the results in the review of literature. When hypothesis is not supported, interpreting the results becomes difficult. So causes to be identified for non-significant results to be stated clearly. It could be either due to the small sample size, or it could be using the inadequate instruments or the tools for the data collection. It should be objective when considering the non-significant results. Negative results are equally important as the positive results because both of them advance the knowledge. Number three, considering the significance of the findings. How significant the findings could be, the statistical significance and clinical significance. They are the two most important factors while interpreting the research findings. And it is a subjective interpretation of the research, the results that are meaningful. Statistical significance indicates that findings from an analysis are true and they are unlikely to be the results of the chance. Result findings that are meaningful for patient care in the absence or presence of statistical significance are clinically significant. So achieving statistical significance does not mean study findings are valuable, and it depends on the magnitude of the effect being studied. Statistical significance. So we have seen two types. One is statistical significance and another is clinical significance. So statistical significance refers to the probability of the findings which are due to the chance. Significance testing relies on p-values and it only provides whether the hypothesis is accepted or rejected or there's a difference between the groups. Statistically significant differences are determined using a level of probability or the p level so that null hypothesis is not wrongly rejected due to the chance and when null hypothesis is accepted, and that is a type 1 error. The accepted p level of 0.05 suggests that there is a 95% probability that the null hypothesis is rejected when there is no difference between the groups. P value is only the chance that correct yes or no decision regarding hypothesis is made. The statistical significance does not provide any information on clinical applicability of the findings. Large studies, they can be significant without being clinically important, and small studies may be important but without being significant. Statistically significant differences do not provide any clinical insight into the important variables. For example, treatment effect size, magnitude of change, or direction of the outcome. So p-values should be considered along with the effect size, one, sample size, and then study design. So clinical significance is based on the practical importance of a treatment. Evidence-based practitioners should examine research outcomes for their clinical significance rather than statistical significance. So clinical significance is more important than the statistical significance. So clinical significance is a decision based on the relevance of a particular intervention or a treatment. So it is based on the practical importance of a particular treatment or an intervention. And this may involve statistical significance or may not involve statistical significance. To determine clinical significance, the research findings should be evaluated for both the validities, internal validity and external validity. Now, internal validity reveals the amount of bias within the study that may influence the research results. And the factors that are influenced in internal validity are proper study design, recruitment of the sample, randomization, blinding, standardized tools, and statistical analysis. So these are the factors in internal validity. External validity. External validity reveals the ability of a study to be generalized to other population and other settings. And the factors influenced in the external validity are complexities of the protocol and cost effectiveness of the intervention in experimental studies. A repeatable protocol, the protocol which can be repeated or replicated, it enables reproduction of the study results in the alternate settings. And if an intervention is not cost effective, it may not be feasible in the clinical practice. So studies with highest internal validity may still lack the external validity. and that may limit their applicability in the clinical settings. So this was external validity, repeatable protocols, and then cost effectiveness. Effectiveness of treatment. So how beneficial is the intervention, or how effective for the greater population? The most common question regarding the clinical significance is whether the treatment is effective or not, and whether it will change the clinical practice or not. So how effective the treatment is, or how beneficial the treatment is for the greater population. Effect size and confidence intervals. So this decides whether a particular statistical result is of relevance to practice or not. An effect size indicates the magnitude of the difference in outcomes between experimental group and the control group. When there is a high effect size, that indicates there is a larger difference between the experimental group and the control group. The confidence interval provides information about the magnitude and the direction of an effect, and it offers more clinical value. So this was effect size and confidence interval. Generalizing the findings. Generalizing the findings means the extent to which the research findings can be generalized to other settings and to other subjects. For example, if a new intervention is found to be successful, will it be applicable to other settings? So this is external validity. The generalizability of the findings should be assessed. It should be beyond the given research situation, and it should be assessed by considering the research design, one, sample representativeness, and the size of the sample. If the study used true experimental design, the results can be applied to the target population. And if the sample characteristics are representative to the population characteristics, the results can be applied to the entire target population. And if the sample size happens to be small, and it is less likely to be representative. Larger samples will generalize the results to the target population. And when interpreting findings of the study, the risk to the validity is examined. For example, sample selection process and the sample size. And if the sample is representative and it is adequate in number, the results can be applied to the entire target population. Drawing conclusions. So study conclusions explain what knowledge has been gained from the present study, and these are derived from the research findings. So while formulating the conclusions, the researcher must interpret the results within the context of the study by the sample size and the characteristics of the sample. And the following questions need to be answered while drawing conclusions. 1. Was the study problem answered? 2. Were the research purposes met? 3. Was the research hypothesis supported? Was the theoretical framework supported? All these questions should be clearly explained to the readers. The findings of a study are very specific and they are related to the study data only. Conclusions are not just a restatement of the findings, they are more abstract. They involve the use of more general terms. The conclusions should go beyond the findings. For example, phrases such as results of the study indicate or the study findings demonstrate, they both link the summary and the meanings of those results. Remember, it is good to remember that research provides support for a position rather than proving anything. Suggesting implications for the practice and further study. So once conclusions are drawn, the research implications are stated. Research implications are basically conclusions taken from the results of the study. So they explain how the findings may affect nursing practice, nursing education, nursing administration, and nursing research. And it refers to the impact that research results might have on future prospects. So every conclusion from the study should have one implication. The research implications are always supported by strong statistical significance. Implications may be directed to the practitioners, to the educators, to the researchers, and to the administrators. Recommendations. So recommendations, once conclusions help in making recommendations. For example, what needs to be corrected to solve a particular problem? What should be avoided? Researchers should have a broad knowledge of their topic, that recommendations are made for the future studies, and they give specific actions to be taken with regard to the policy, the practice, or the subsequent research. And they should firmly state what steps to be taken and what immediate actions should be implemented. And they are a logical extension of the research study recommendations. So it is replication of a study is conducting a similar study. Same hypotheses are tested repeatedly on different samples and in different settings. And recommendations are presented in the last section of the research report. So they should be strongly supported, and they should be recommendations should be based on the results and findings of the research, and they should indicate the specific measures to be taken or the specific directions to be followed. So when recommending future studies, the delimitations and limitations of the present study should be considered. Facts and the values should be combined together. Selecting the different characteristics of this sample, selecting a random sample instead of a convenient sample, modifying the existing tool or using altogether another tool, use interview technique for data collection rather than self-report. Errors. So there can be some errors while stating conclusions and recommendations. So generalizing the findings beyond the population, selectively focusing on some results which are good or positive and ignoring the others which are negative, not considering the limitations of the study, falsely reporting or interpreting statistical significance, stating the conclusions without having any evidence to support. So there's some errors which could be avoided while stating conclusions and recommendations. So there is some, to be very clear about these concepts. Let's see their meanings, the findings. So what are the findings? They are the presentation of results in empirical data. Discussion. So what is discussion? With the previous literature review, the problems also faced. Interpretation. So what do the results mean related to the prior research? Also, generalization, it is extending the results beyond the study sample. Conclusion, the knowledge gained from the study. Implications, they are important for nursing practice, theory, and administration. Recommendations, so this is stating actions to be taken in respect of the future of further research or policy. Common errors which could be in data interpretation, confirming results to prediction or desire, hoping for spectacular results, comparing when commonality is absent, assuming a cause and effect relationship when it doesn't exist, failing to consider the important factors, basing conclusions on the lack of evidence. Conclusion. So coming to the conclusion, analysis and interpretation of the data is the most important phase of the research process. Planning for data analysis is very essential, and suitable statistics should be selected right in the beginning. Adequate time to be spent on preparation for analysis. A table can be prepared right in the beginning, which should include hypothesis or the research question, all the variables to be studied, and statistical tests to be conducted. So it could include in this tabular format the plan for data analysis, hypothesis or the research question, variables, and statistical tests. So students, this was all about interpretation and data analysis. Thank you.